pre-show quid pro quo. MJ, you get one question. It can be any question in the world. It could be about sports. It could be about the weather. It could be about what I had for breakfast. It could be about, the UFOs, ghosts. You can be my occult thing. It could be anything. Go ahead and ask. Go ahead.
Okay. I wish this question was coming at the end, but I think we're going to have to do it right now.
All right.
What do you actually believe about the devil?
What do I actually believe about the devil? Oh, dear. I think it is a combination of a bunch of things, but I think it is an overarching spirit of a very trickster nature, but one that is probably very old that we do not understand. And I couldn't give you an on-the-point definition what spirits are, but I can say that the devil is a literal spirit of a highly trickster nature that has been doing things with us and for us and against us for a long time, and we have no idea how it works. But that is just basically what the devil is. It's an interesting spirit is probably how I'll put it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. There you go. Hey everybody, welcome to What Magic Is This? A podcast that wishes you to ponder, if you had to spend time in jail for every time you broke the law, how long would your sentence be? My name is Doug Batchelor, and on this podcast we're going to be talking about magic, the occult, the paranormal, the supernatural, the esoteric, and the weird. So if you haven't listened to this show before, basically what happens is that I give my guests a list of about 25 topics. They get to choose whatever topic they want. We bring them in and we hash it out, so hopefully you will get a little bit of a better understanding of what topic that we're going to be going through. So my guest today is MJ. How are you, MJ?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be here.
Perfect. Would you prefer MJ or Marie-Josie?
Oh, definitely MJ.
Oh, it's all about letters of the alphabet.
Oh, yeah.
So if you haven't guessed, my guest, MJ, has chosen a very interesting topic. She has chosen the devil. Yeah, we're going to get into all things the devil. I just want to share a small story here as to what's going to be happening this episode specifically. So, and it's going to be through a small analogy. I grew up outside of Calgary, Alberta. Kind of 15 minutes outside of Calgary, there was an amusement park. It was called Callaway Park. It was only open from like May until I believe September. They had rides there. It was as close as we could get to Disneyland or here in Toronto would be Canada's Wonderland, that kind of thing. So, but it was very small. But one of the attractions was a shooting gallery. And you go up, they have little rifles that they give you. They're attached to a cord. And you have a little gallery. It was like a bar saloon because it's Calgary and it's Western themed. So there was like a mannequin sitting at a piano, and there was like a vase with flowers, and there was a bar with bottles and glasses, a picture on the wall, that kind of thing. And if you point your gun and hit one of the targets, it would cause a sensor to go off, and the thing that you shot at would move in some strange way. It would like activate and jiggle around, and all the fun. With this episode, with the devil, it's going to be like walking up and giving the carny a token, and the carny says to you, okay, you get one pull of the trigger, hit the devil. And so you're trying to look, and everything kind of looks very similar, but you don't know where you're going. And so you pick one thing, you point, and you pull the trigger, and the thing does something. It does something. And then you're like, okay, I got it. And then you look at the carny and you ask, did I hit it? Did I hit the devil? And the carny's like, I don't know. So that's kind of, I don't know if that makes sense to people, but that's kind of what we're going on with this episode. The devil means so many different things to so many different people. As the pre-show quid pro quo kind of says, like, my definition of the devil is very specific. You can ask somebody from a different culture what the devil is. It's going to be totally different than mine. So we're in a shooting gallery here, and trying to pull the trigger and hit the devil with one bullet, that's just not going to happen. That's what we're up against in this episode. It was a pretty frustrating episode for me and a little bit taxing. I'm not going to say why, but it was a very interesting episode to do. I want people to know specifically for this episode, I'm not going to be going into Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan or the Temple of Satan. That's a topic for another time. There's much to be learned there, so that's going to be a totally different category. We're going to be talking specifically about the devil. So, What is the devil? Like, are we really doing this? Like,
Oh yeah, we're doing this all right. We are doing this.
I think everybody knows what the devil is. As I said, I think everybody has their own idea of what the devil is, and it's a very personal thing. A lot of times it's very cultural or religious based. The devil seems to me, though, to be the personification of evil on earth. The devil also, in a very strange way, kind of goes to the heart of the occult or to magic. A lot of people I know might have lived through the Satanic Panic, and or at least older people. For a period of time, the devil was almost always around or always in conversation through video games or music and this kind of thing. Devil kind of equals, to most people, kind of equals evil. MJ, you grew up Baha'i.
Yes.
So you have a God in your life.
Yes.
And I want to ask you, what is the devil to you?
Funny enough, we don't have a devil per se in the Baha'i faith. Just like the concept of God, I think the concept of evil and the devil, they're really interesting topics, because this idea of, let's start with God and then we'll move to the devil just really quickly.
Sure.
The concept of God is an unknowable essence that encompasses everything.
Right.
And so how do you have a counterpart to something that encompasses everything?
Right. An opponent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to have an opponent on. It's everything.
It's everything.
The closest thing to what we would see as evil or the devil really is this idea that to be godly and to be good would be really to find our true spiritual nature.
Right.
So anything that is detached from that true spiritual nature, which we really truly believe that we're here to, create an ever-advancing civilization, and that ultimately we are going towards being noble creatures, spiritual creatures. And so the devil for us would be our ego.
Okay.
Or that's the devil is sort of the outside personification of what the ego, the self, would be when we are completely disconnected to our higher purpose. I don't know if that helps.
No, it does. And I think I've talked about before, a lot of people think that magic is kind of like the dissolution of the ego. Like they think that that's like the main point of magic. I disagree. Let's get into the story of the devil. And I'm just going to preface this a little bit by saying we're going to be operating mainly here within a Christian purview. So we're going to be talking about Catholicism and Protestantism mainly. I know that the concept of the devil, it exists in Islam, it exists in Judaism, in the Abrahamic religions. But we're going to try and kind of stick with Christianity, because that's kind of what people know when I say the devil. When we're talking about the story of the devil, we're kind of mainly going to be talking about the story of Lucifer. Lucifer was one of God's angels. He was kind of like, not God's like second in command, but he was like, of the angels, he was like the most ennobled. He was a great organizer, a general, if you will, almost in some way. He was first in chief amongst these angels. But what he did is that he made a play for God's throne. Not so much a play, but he wanted to be higher than God. And this trespass on God caused Lucifer to be expelled from heaven. He was sent down to earth, and then he's here. And while on earth, he turned into a serpent, and in the Garden of Eden caused Eve to eat the forbidden apple, forbidden fruit, if you will, from the tree, which caused the fall of man and mankind to be sent out of the paradise, basically. We all know these stories. The devil is also the reason that God needs to become a man in Jesus Christ. Through his death and through Christ's resurrection, it allows for the reconciliation of God and man. But until that actually happens, the devil is the source of evil and suffering on earth, beyond God's grasp, but also an agent of God's will, which, work that out if you can. It's kind of strange. There will be a final battle at the end of history between good and evil, and he and his demons will be consigned to hell for all eternity. There's this idea that we have now that the devil or Lucifer is in hell. That kind of came from a couple of things. Dante's The Divine Comedy. The devil is the ruler of hell. He's got 3 heads. Each head is kind of munching on the body of a sinner. He's got wings which blow cold wind through hell. And people forget this, that he's also frozen in ice, which, if hell has already frozen over to Dante. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there you go. So there's also the idea of the devil as kind of like a demiurge. I know I'm going to have an episode in the future about the Gnostics, the Bogomils, and the Cathars. The Gnostics had this idea of some kind of a demiurge, of an evil god, that all material matter on earth is his doing, and that the devil itself is the fall from spirit to matter. That's the great heresy of the devil. So here's the thing, though. The devil and Satan don't become God's terrifying opponent until about the 12th century. Before this, the devil was kind of like a comic trickster kind of character. He wasn't some crazy video game boss that you'd fight. He played a very small role. This is kind of apparent if you look through several works of art before the Bible was produced en masse. There was no kind of consensus as to what the devil looked like. The horn thing and all of that comes from like Moloch and a bunch of other sources, or the cloven feet from like Pan. Before the 12th century, the devil didn't have very much to do. What we need to realize is that God and his actions and his deeds, it was kind of like a Marx Brothers movie. I don't know if you've ever seen a Marx Brothers movie. God was kind of like Groucho Marx. He was kind of the thing that everything kind of revolved around, but he was in control of a lot of it. But there were these characters coming in and doing things, and I have to fix this, and the devil would kind of be like Harpo, kind of like a chaotic neutral, kind of like honking his horn and doing his things, and Groucho would be like, what are you doing? But this was all before the 12th century. But something changed. Of course, what changed? Well, to be very broad, the world changed. There was also some magic and heresy. So let's talk about this period of time from about the 11th century to the 14th, 15th century. What was maybe the biggest thing that occurred? Well, it would seem like up to this point, God had left the earth. There was a lot of war. There was massive changes. But more than anything, there was the plague. We can't even in our minds imagine what it was like with the plague going through. Some towns report having more than 80% of the people in their towns dead. What do you do when you've lived your life up to that point being a very pious person and all of your family members slowly die one by one? Where is God in your life? There was a lack of control in people's lives, and so a lot of them started to turn towards other influences, things like magic, for instance. The Catholic Church, they felt that there was a lack of control on people's hearts and their minds, and they needed something to blame. Before the 12th century, kind of like village or folk magic was seen as being like silly and superstitious. The Catholic Church decided that they needed something to blame, and what is a great scapegoat? Also, goat is, pretty...
Did that come from that? Sorry.
No, not entirely.
Oh, okay.
No.
That would have been cool, though.
Yeah, it would have been cool. They needed something to kind of pin this on, and the devil was a very, very good one to pin it on. In the 6th century, Theophilus of Adana, he was a churchman. He apparently made a pact with the devil for a position within the church. It's from him that we get one of the major influences on the story of Faust, and the idea of a man selling his soul to the devil for material gains and this kind of thing. Through Thomas Aquinas in the 1200s, he said that people performed miracles with the aid of the devil. In the 1300s, you have documents of witches making pacts with the devil. Around 1484, there was Pope Innocent VIII. He issued a papal bull that said that all magic is heresy. Now, before this again, magic really wasn't an existential threat to the church. Viewed as superstition, although the church definitely talked about it, and the church within specific states within Europe, they would also put out edicts that basically said that magic was wrong. The courts were a bit strange at the time because you had the people's court, and you also had the religious court, and the people's court couldn't try somebody for magic or for witchcraft. That would have to be the religious courts that would do that kind of thing. When Pope Innocent VIII put out this papal bull, that was it. He was just basically said, all magic is heresy, and you can prosecute those suspected for this. And the Inquisitions and everything, they started before this, but they picked up more steam as a result. On a side note, Pope Innocent VIII is a very interesting guy. He kind of had his own magic. He used to write in ciphers. He had tons of illegitimate children, one of which being Christopher Columbus.
What?
Yeah. Oh, and also, according to his death, he was dying. People brought in a Jewish doctor, and the Jewish doctor basically drained 4 young boys of blood and slowly fed it to this dying pope.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, and
Wow.
the 3 boys died, and the pope died. So, come on. Come on, bud.
Please.
Interesting character, to say the least. Look them up. There will be a show note.
But the Pope never does anything against the church.
Yeah. Suffice to say, the evolution of the devil is one of control and blame in extremely terrible life circumstances and change. The Catholic Church was terrified about a lot of things, and they needed something to blame. Protestant Reformation started to tear through as well. They were scared of that. The devil is central to magic in many, many ways. As a new magician, I think that you need to give the devil a bit more thought. Magic and the devil. Mainly, I think the figure of Lucifer himself. He is an amazing, amazing figure. His name means morning star. The morning star is, of course, Venus, which is seen at dusk and seen at dawn. It is kind of a star of the liminal, when day turns to night. I love Lucifer, the story of Lucifer. Strangely enough, John the Baptist was also called morning star, and also the dude he baptized, Jesus, also called morning star.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyways, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But Lucifer itself is kind of like as the bringer of Promethean fire. Did the devil do us a favor by telling us to eat the fruit in the Garden of Eden? We wouldn't have everything we have now if it wasn't for him. I like the idea of Lucifer, and there's an amazing potential behind Lucifer. And
at some point, I would like you to tell me what you think about what the representation of the forbidden fruit is. Why was it bad to eat a piece of fruit? What does it represent?
Well, we didn't need to eat, so it was one of those things. It was consumption. It was consumption of something else. We lived in paradise and we had no need to eat. We were naming the animals. We were doing all of that fun stuff. We never finished doing that, by the way. Something we're still doing to this day.
Yeah.
But it was consumption of another thing.
Right.
Consumption of life. Destruction of something.
Right.
I think.
Which is interesting that it was seen as a bad thing. Again, it's this
God was like, you have everything you need, bud. You need to destroy something. You need to consume something else.
And I think that this is just the interesting thing about what sort of this idea of control that the Christian church at the time did, is that they told us what the apple was and what it meant, which kind of, for me, puts in perspective, well, what did the serpent really do? And what was he? Yeah. And why is it so bad? What if the fruit was actually this idea of knowledge?
Correct.
So what if you're eating knowledge and you are out of heaven because now you can think for yourself?
Consciousness.
So all of a sudden, this idea of eating the fruit and Adam and Eve being kicked out of Garden of Eden takes a whole new thing. But the church told us what we were supposed to think about the devil and the fruit and paradise.
Very much so.
Sorry, it's one of my favorite stories.
Is it?
And
It's
I
a great story.
absolutely love kind of just like changing this whole idea, the whole notion that Adam and Eve were perfect. Yeah. And that the apple was actually something bad.
Not just them, everything.
Exactly. And so what if you all of a sudden give a different meaning to the apple? I'm just saying.
We'll go back to the Garden of Eden with a poem a little bit later. You'll like that.
Excited.
I like this Luciferian fire, though. This is kind of like, was it a sin that we got cast? Not a sin, but was it a terrible thing that we got cast out? Or was it a gift?
Exactly.
That's why I love Lucifer.
Thank you.
He's got amazing potential, Lucifer. There's a great book that people need to read if this is your jam. It's not an easy book to read, but it is an extremely rewarding one. It's called Lucifer Princeps by Peter Gray. It was put out by Scarlet Imprint. Give it a read. If you like Lucifer, this is the place to go. As a magician, a lot of what I do is very Solomonic. I work with spirits and demons, kind of at the top of a hierarchy within a lot of the texts that I go off of. It's called the LBS or the LBA. That is Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Satan, or Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth. And they're kind of at the top of a hierarchy. I don't invoke them personally, but they will be used in some of the words I use to conjure these spirits. So they're kind of at the top of the hierarchy. The devil, I don't think the devil is that bad. One of my favorite contemporary figures in magic is a guy called Gordon White. He said that back in the day, people would be working with the devil, but they'd be at the church every Sunday. Like that's kind of how they did. The devil was there, but they still consider themselves extremely godly people. Pre-13th century concepts of the devil is where it's at for magicians. I say head there. Go to the stories there. Those are the most rewarding things. That might be the forbidden fruit, if we will. The devil as a trickster. This is something I can get behind, and I think that this is where people need to head. Let's get back to the Garden of Eden. You ready for a poem?
I love it. Can't wait.
Okay, here we go. When the flush of a newborn sun first shone on Eden's green and gold, Our father Adam sat beneath the tree, and with a stick scratched in the mold. And that first root sketch that the world did see was joy to his mighty heart. Till the devil whispered from the tree, it's pretty, but is it art? I love this idea. As a trickster, he's constantly making you think. And this whole idea of the devil being in the details, like this is the details are what we use to think. And trickster stories, trickster myths are so important to magic. Again, people head there. I mean, one of the more recent, well, it's not that recent, but one of the images that we have of the devil is that of Baphomet, which I don't know if you've seen, but if you've seen any documentary about black magic, it's a goat-headed figure with a lamp on its head, with goat legs, one finger pointing up, one finger pointing down, the pentagram on its forehead. Yep. Everybody's seen this.
Yeah,
This is Baphomet. Baphomet, I think, got its name from a kind of a mistranslation of the word Muhammad. Anyway, that is that's totally different.
Whole other story.
We can't really go there. But Baphomet has ridiculous connotations. So many symbols involved in one image. It's another great place to head if the idea of the devil as a trickster and the devil as some kind of symbols. So I say for us as magicians, or for people just starting out, you need to bring the devil back to earth. Don't keep him below it. There's a great book by George P. Hansen called The Trickster and the Paranormal, in which a lot of the stuff that we deal with, psychic effects or psi effects, ghosts, the paranormal and the supernatural, UFOs, all of these kind of things are strange. They have a trickster quality to them. As soon as we think that we understand it, they seem to morph and they seem to change. Anytime we try to go to these places to look at them and study them, they're no longer there. There's this wonderful element, and this would be stuff that would be considered works of the devil back in the day. But let's just try and get it back to the works of the trickster. So the devil makes us think. Did he convince us that he's evil? That's another question. The devil and evil. If indeed the devil is the embodiment of evil, then what is evil? I think for most people, it would be the idea of suffering, undue suffering, usually caused by something. Also asking most people, they would probably say the devil is man, strangely enough, and specifically other men. It's not you, it's somebody else. Yeah. Again, with the idea of a goat or a scapegoat. What would you say, MJ, would be within America and Europe specifically, would be considered the biggest scapegoat or evil within the world right now, in the last 20 years?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Can I answer for you?
Yeah, sure.
Radical Islam.
Oh, it's funny. I was gonna say other religions, and radical. Not even radical Islam. I think just Islam or people with darker skin tones.
We consider this. It's a very broad term for describing a lot of different types of Islam. We just kind of slap it on radical Islam, and so it just lacks any kind of nuance, which is strange because they consider us the devil too.
Yeah. I think they got more reason to consider us the devil than the other way around, but...
Kettle of fish territory.
Right. Well, and this is the interesting thing. I think that in a sense, everything that is evil is what you don't understand.
Correct. What it does do is it denies any kind of nuance, and we really haven't moved on from the thought process that the Catholic Church held in the 11th to the 15th century, right? Like this is a mode of control. Having these scapegoats is about control. We need something else to blame. Yep. They're the ones that are doing evil. It's not us. It can't be.
No, you're always the hero of your own story.
Exactly.
You're always devoid of it.
But this idea that, and I've seen a lot of it recently, is that humanity is pure evil. It's people take a distance. Like, no, it's not the Muslims. It's not the Western capitalists. It's humanity. We're just evil by nature. Humanity is the devil. We're the problem. There's a book by John Gray. It's called Straw Dogs. If you were to read this book, you would come away thinking, yeah, we're the devil. We're the worst thing that has happened to this planet. If we didn't exist, everything would be fine. It's us. And it's a rough read. It's a really, getting through this book it's tough. It's compelling. A lot of authors said it was maybe one of the greatest books written in the last 40 years. It got a lot of press. But it's an incredibly, incredibly pessimistic view of humanity.
Which is also lacking nuance.
True enough. And to me, it doesn't ring true with us being the devil and evil. We are not the problem. We're part of it. Perhaps the greatest trick the devil pulled is convincing us that we are separate from nature, I think. So let's talk about nature a little bit. Now, I have problems with this term and the term environment, but that's for another time. I use the word so most people can understand what I'm talking about. So we have a very flawed concept of nature, even now as we are seemingly destroying it. All of our environmental narratives are hurt because of this flawed concept that we are separate, and nature's there and we're here. I think as a magician, or somebody interested in the occult, this is something to think about. You need to fix this problem with your own frameworks, I think. And I can't do it for you. I say animism helps, and you've heard me talk about it many, many times before. Spirits help as well, I think. But episodes that I've done in the past, and there will be episodes I will do in the future about this that might guide you right now. I can't give you the key to unlock that door. I can just show you that there is indeed a door. So who is evil? Us? No. How about the idea that Mother Nature is evil? There was a writer by the name of Howard Bloom. He's an interesting guy. He was huge into music press. I believe at one time he was the press agent for Michael Jackson, Joan Jett, Prince, everybody. He was struck with chronic fatigue syndrome. And he decided in this time to research and write a book. And it was released in 1995. It's called The Lucifer Principle, a scientific expedition into the forces of history. Now, I just want to preface this by saying I do not buy everything that Howard Bloom is selling. Taking Lucifer's lead, I want you to think about these kind of things. And this book is it brings up a lot of interesting concepts. Concepts such as good and evil with nature is an oversimplification, I would say, for sure, certainly. But hear Howard out a little bit. Nature being evil. I know a lot of people would say that you can't do that. That's a judgment, or to apply a human concept to something that is not human is wrong. Lucifer is, to Howard, the dark side of cosmic fecundity. Nature does not abhor evil. She embraces it. She uses it to build. We may be outraged with her tragedies and our callous indifference to life, but we need some distance. We need to take a step back and change our axioms about this planet and nature and realize that from our worst qualities also come our best. And he goes through all of this, and the fact that things like a pecking order within nature, how we like to organize ourselves into groups, either culturally or through race or through religion. Religion actually comes from ligare, which means ligament, which is a binding together. To Howard, it is nature at its most evil. That includes us. When we buck against it, though, and use these organizing principles. Remember, Lucifer was a very good organizer up in heaven before his fall. But we use these organizing principles against her, that our greatest problems facing us get solved. Remember, this is an extremely creative force. And the Luciferian, Promethean creative art is alive within Mother Nature. And this is from the book. He says, "We need to stare directly into nature's bloody face and realize that she has saddled us with an evil for a reason. And we must understand that reason is to outwit her." So, what is the first step? Well, let's get rid of this separation bullshit, I think. I've talked before in my consciousness episode about final participation. Owen Barfeld, maybe the final participation being that we start to realize that we have an active role to play in nature. It is us, and it is in everything that we do. And in some way, this supposed Howard Bloom's evil within nature is that's just us. We're here. So you can go to that episode. It is a troublesome work, this book, the Lucifer Principle. It's Luciferian in many, many ways, but it is worth reading because it makes you think. And just don't buy everything he's saying. Examine, see what fits, move on from there. Again, I keep talking about this. If the epitome of evil is nature, ask yourself, how? I think how is an extremely important question. We always get wrapped up in what is evil or what is the devil. I think a far more important question than that is how. How is the thing always? And if I can encapsulate my podcast into one word, it would be the word how with a question mark. I'm going to link to a video on my webpage, and this isn't me trying to get you guys to clickbait or anything like that, or to get higher traffic at my website. Trust me, it doesn't have a ton of traffic at this point, but it's going to be of a video. I'm not going to tell you what the video is right away. It involves animals. That's the only thing I'll tell you. But I want you, when you watch this video, to ask yourself, where is evil? I know the first reaction to this video will be, well, nature can't be evil, etc., etc. But maybe step ahead of that. Maybe try and go beyond that and say, okay, well, if nature's not evil, does that include us? So I want people to watch this video. It'll be there on the webpage, whatmagicisthis.com. But these questions, they should elicit some kind of thinking within you. So all of these things, as a magician, you need to think about. Let's get even more Luciferian. Is there only just good and evil? Perhaps another trick that the devil pulled is binary thinking. This is also something that you need to solve, everybody, and I can't provide the answers. Clarity is always our ambition, so dualistic distinctions are the primary operating system that we have. What if we had more options, perhaps? What if the devil gave us a bit of a clue in this? So there is a book by Adamai Philotunis called The Good, the Bad, and the Funny. It's his contention that dualistic binary thinking has given us many things, makes things very simple, but the worst of these things is conflict, intolerance, prejudice, and the like. So we have created a polarity. It just seemingly is what we do. But what if we stopped thinking in twos and started thinking in threes? Of all the books that I've mentioned today, this is probably the one I think most people should read. It's very fun and it is worth reading. Instead of good and evil or God and devil, what if we have God, devil, trickster? And I like that. Again, what I was talking about, I like seeing the devil as a trickster. It sounds simple, but it is not. What if we started seeing things as having a bit more of a gray area and not just being good or evil? Like, how would you look at something like Donald Trump? Like, most people would say that a lot of people I know would say that he's absolutely evil. Well, the trickster doesn't have to be good, and the trickster doesn't have to be evil. A lot of the things he does, he seems more like a fool than anything, which would probably fall a little bit into the element.
What if this idea of evil, what if this idea of bad was just, instead of a force that was pulling us one side, what if it was the absence of something? So what if evil, instead of seeing it as this force, it's actually just the absence of good? Just kind of like the darkness is not a thing. Right. It's the absence of light. Yeah. And so I feel like when you look at someone like Trump, what is he the absence of? Right. Probably in this case it's intelligence, but and many other things. But anyway, there's also different ways of looking at that. It's just it's not a tug of war necessarily. Yeah. It could just be
you holding a rope and there's wondering when something's going to tug back.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right. No, I like this idea of maybe there's this third way of thinking about things. Everything shouldn't be binary. I know I've talked on this episode, on this podcast quite a bit about getting rid of binary thinking, and that there's not just like left-hand path to magic, right-hand path to magic, black magic, white magic, that kind of thing. This goes across the board. This goes for everything. Give yourself three things: good, bad, funny. Devil, God, trickster. There's something very important here. Again, it sounds simple, but remember what I said. I moved the devil into the trickster territory. I find this is very helpful, and you'll be amazed to see just how this starts working as a mental exercise. That a trickster has a much larger part to play in this world will become very apparent very, very quickly. And this whole, maybe, is perhaps the most creative and important part of trying to think like this. So we've kind of gone all everywhere with this episode, MJ. I guess what I want everyone to take from this episode is that, where does the devil fit? Awesome evil or Promethean creative trickster? Or us, or Mother Nature, or all of these things in some way. It's probably going to be something like that. But as a magician, how is the devil? Not what is the devil. How is the devil? How does he do things? That's something you need to work out. The worst thing that you could do is ignore the devil, to not give him, her, it any kind of spiritual agency. So how do you give the devil his due? And that's it. Ooh. All right, let's get some air in the room. You ready? You ready to talk about it a little bit? All right. So let's talk about devils within culture. So there's so many films that deal with the devil, but I don't really think a lot of these films really do justice. Ones that come to mind are, I guess, Tim Curry's character of Darkness in Ridley Scott's Legend, but that's Tim Curry, and Tim Curry could, I don't know, fart on screen for 3 hours, and I'd still love it. That's kind of the one that I go to. For literature, I'd say that there's one book specifically called The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. It's about the devil in Soviet Russia. It's seriously a great book. It's a wonderful book in every respect. It's where the song, also great, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones comes from. Yeah, that's because of that book. My second favorite devil within some kind of art would be Lucifer from Neil Gaiman's Sandman. I know they made a TV show. I have not seen the TV show. A lot of people I know like it, but Lucifer in this comic book series is absolutely wonderful. He is a great character. At one moment, he's on a beach on Earth, and he's approached by a widower whose wife passed away somewhat recently, and they talk about sunsets and how this widower goes to the sunset to see God's creation and how great it is. And Lucifer's kind of like, it's all right. And then the widower walks away, and then an amazing sunset comes, and even Lucifer himself has to say, all right, God, you still got it. You son of a bitch. You still got it. That is my favorite depiction of Lucifer in any artwork, etc. Let's go back to films. I think everybody should watch The Exorcist. I think it's a wonderful movie. Actually, today is William Peter Blatty's birthday, the guy who wrote The Exorcist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is he still alive?
No, he passed away in 2017.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wrote the book. He wrote the screenplay, and I think he wrote the third Exorcist, which is okay. It's much better than the second one.
First one still makes me
it's an
quiver
amazing
in my
movie.
booties.
Stick with it and realize that I think the true evil that comes through in that movie is not through the demon, but through all of the medical processes they put Regan through, like to try and understand what's going on. It's like that to me is the most frightening part of that movie. Watch The Exorcist. Strangely enough, I think my favorite film, devil, is from the guy who played the priest, the final priest in The Exorcist, Max von Sydow. He played the devil in a movie called Needful Things. It's a 1993 Stephen King adaptation. He plays the owner of an antique shop. I think his name is like Raymond Gaunt or something like that. It's just wonderful to see an old Swedish actor play the devil. It's fantastic. The movie's garbage, but just for one, if you want to see Max von Sydow just chew on the scenery every time he's on there, it's the best. It's great. Also film, I think everybody, specifically those that are interested in the cult, they need to rewatch The Ninth Gate. Yeah, it's much better than you remember. I get a lot of people talking to me. One of the newer comments on this podcast has been like, hey everybody, if you like this podcast, get ready to have a really great reading list. Unfortunately, with this one, there's not a lot of good books about the devil. Most of them, specifically history of the devil, most of them kind of suck. They all have some kind of agenda. And I realize that every book needs to have an agenda. I get it. But for the devil, a lot of them are either like pro-Christian, anti-Christian. There's ones that are like pro-atheism. One's seemingly like nearly pro-nihilism. There's one book I read, I think it was The Origins of Satan, which is it's railing against anti-Semitism, which is valid. But yeah, they all have an agenda. But I'll be glad to let you guys know. Listening, I found the book. I found a great book. It's somewhat recent too. It is called The Devil, A New Biography by Philip C. Almond. He is a professor of religion at the University of Queensland in Australia. He also wrote a book about Reginald Scott, who is a figure that is definitely going to be on this podcast. If you don't know who he is, he's quite amazing. He does not gloss over the importance of the magic and the occult within the story of the devil. It is a fantastic book. I devoured it very quickly. That's my book recommendation. If you want to read one book from this episode about the devil, that is it. Also, the books I mentioned, Lucifer Princeps by Peter Gray. It's going to be followed sometime soon by a book called Lucifer Praxis. I actually reached out to Peter Gray himself and asked, hey man, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, when is Lucifer Praxis going to be coming out? And he said, soon. Wait, but I just released a book called The Brazen Vessel that's got some Luciferian essays in there. Go there. So the book, The Lucifer Principle by Howard Bloom, worth a read, but don't buy into all of it. Some stuff is a stretch, but it makes you think. And because of that, it's Luciferian in that regard. The Good, the Bad, the Funny by Adame Philotunis. Gotta read that. The other book I mentioned, Straw Dogs by John Gray. If you want to go there, it is very down on the human race. Okay, promise me this, people. If you read Straw Dogs by John Gray, you have to promise me, as soon as you finish it, that you read a book by Gary Lockman called Caretakers of the Cosmos. He talks about this book, and he kind of tables his issues with this book. Also, maybe watch a Marx Brothers movie and see what I'm kind of talking about when I talk about the devil kind of being like a bit of a side character. And God not being the all omnipotent thing that we consider him now. Look through art, guys. Remember that poem. Look through art. The depictions of the devil before the 13th century are crazy. I mean, they're very interesting. Hieronymus Bosch, in his painting The Garden of Earthly Delight, which I have in my study, I have a giant mounted copy of it. The devil's kind of like this weird falcon character that's eating human beings and shitting them into like some kind of a well. Once the Bible started getting printed, people started to add, and that's when you get the horns and what we think of the devil. My favorite representation of the devil is a sculpture, and it's got a wonderful story to it. There was a sculpture done by a guy called L'Ange du Mal, and it was for a cathedral in Paris. He was a Belgian sculptor, and he made this picture of a long-haired, naked angel with kind of bat wings and stuff like that. And the church said, he's too sexy. He looks too good. This will bring people to the dark side. So what did the church do? They went to his brother. I believe his brother was named Guilherme, and the original sculptor was named Joseph. I forget their last names. Forgive me. But what did the brother do? He made an even sexier statue called Le Génie du Mal. It will be the image that I use on my website for this episode. It's such a good picture of the devil. Like, it's just like, oh, yes, that's the devil. But yeah, go through some art, guys. Every occultist worth his weight has got something to say about the devil. A gentleman I talked about earlier, Gordon White, he has an excellent chapter on Old Scratch in his book Pieces of Eight, which is a book I recommend to basically everybody interested in magic. He also has a short but very functional piece about the devil in his book Chaos Protocols. Every occultist who writes probably has an opinion on the devil. There's tons of them. I can't list them all. Jake Stratton Kent, he has some great stuff about Astaroth and Lucifer in his book The True Grimoire. It's very good. Astaroth is a figure I really like, and Astaroth and Lucifer they do some cool things together. It's pretty good. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But last and not least, it's not what does the devil mean to you. It is how do you give the devil his due. And with that, that's the episode, MJ. You made
good
it.
Stuff.
You made it.
Good stuff. Yeah, I don't think the devil's that bad.
No.
It's pretty cool, actually.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You'll be listening to Iron Maiden before you know it. Run to their hips. Anyways, for those interested, head to whatmagicisthis.com. There you can find out ways to subscribe to iTunes, to Stitcher, Google Play, to Spotify, to TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Pandora, I believe I have now. If they've got podcasts, I'm going to be listed. Also on my webpage, you're going to find show notes for each and every show that I do. Guys, the show notes, I go out of my way. I'm going to try and get a lot of really cool stuff on this one. I know I've got a ton of links, and you'll enjoy that. But don't forget to watch that video. Ask yourself, where is the evil in this video? And I'm sorry, it might be a bit disturbing, and it might be a bit triggering, but you need to watch it. And please do. Guys, also, if you enjoy my podcast, say a little something about me on iTunes or any of the other platforms in which you get your podcasts. I greatly appreciate that. I'm getting a bit more popular, which is great. And if you say something about me, that means the world to me. If you have a question, guys, and if you have something you want to ask, please reach out. You can reach me through Twitter. You can reach me through my webpage, any of these things. Instagram, even. I'm starting to get emails, and I'll answer as best as I can. A ton of people actually contacted me this week, and I've enjoyed talking with each and every one of you. It's been an absolute pleasure, but keep it coming. If you ask a question or you want to talk to me, I will reply. At this point, I will reply. I'm not that popular yet, but maybe it's something I want to, as a goal or an ambition, I want to keep through until I stop doing this, but I'm not going anywhere. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And that's it. That's the end of the program. So, MJ, are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready. I'm a little nervous, but I'm ready.
This is the post-show quid pro quo.
Okay.
And you might have to think about this one. Just like your question, it is related to what we just talked about.
Okay.
But I want you to go through the Rolodex of your mind, your vast knowledge of history and religion and everything.
Yep.
And I want you to answer, who do you think was the most evil person to ever live?
Ooh, wow. Again, we can't think in absolutes.
No.
And time may not be the only thing that categorizes history.
Indeed. Vlad the Impaler is seen as a hero to most now.
Right? How many stories do we not know because they were never written? So what is evil?
Right.
Who is playing a role in God's plan and who is playing a role in the devil's plan? I think it would be easy to go with Stalin, Hitler,
Right.
Pol Pot,
Yep.
all of these kind of notorious people.
You missed Chairman Mao.
Chairman Mao. Where does their evil story start, though?
Okay, we'll make this simple for you.
Okay.
When I say evil human, who's the first guy to come to your mind?
Funny enough, literally no one.
Really?
I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
No one. And I think the reason why I'm thinking that is, again, it's way too easy to say this person was evil, blah, blah, blah. And they're obvious. Some are very obvious in terms of what they've done and how much suffering they've brought to the world.
Right.
And then I kind of think about this whole idea that there's knowledge somewhere that gets picked up and there's prejudice that gets picked up. And the evil doesn't start when the killings start.
Right.
Or the evil doesn't necessarily even need to have a killing.
The person is a process of...
Again, because we have to really break down this idea of good and evil.
Right.
And this is not me saying, well, like Hitler wasn't that bad. Like, this is not what I'm saying. No. But it really is kind of...
Did great for the economy.
He did. Wow, it's really breaking down what evil is and what good is, and how does that affect knowledge, what is connected to which knowledge, prejudice, and also this idea of humanity. Again, we talked about it before the session, this idea that there was always something outside of us that is evil. Right. And yet we're part of this world. So
we're not the problem, we're part of it.
We're part of the problem and we're part of the solution. And so
I think things look pretty bright for us as human beings.
In a crazy world, I also think so. And I think the interesting thing is it's through the hardships and through the challenges that we will actually find the way to have our bright future. Right. So this is why I will not speculate.
That's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was funny. There was a poll done, I think, in like the mid-90s. They asked people, like, if you had to be locked in a room with one person, an evil person, which person would you least like to be locked in the room with? And they were, like, mentioning, like, Hitler and Charles Manson. And I took a step back. I was like, man, Hitler was tiny. Charles Manson was 5'2". I could give that guy a noogie. And the most evil people, are like, there's people you definitely don't want to be in a room with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Hitler's not one of them.
Yeah.
Like, him and his flatulence and his...
And you also kind of think about, like, who gets there are the people who kind of get the brunt of everything. Right. Like, if you think about Hitler, he wouldn't have been able to do what he was doing. He wouldn't have been able to lead people had the people not listened to him.
It was a committee of evil involved.
Right? So he had his people who were bringing everything down. And then there were... And I know it gets complicated because there's, brainwashing and then there's all of this stuff. But he wouldn't have been able to kill millions of Jews if it wasn't for the people doing the killing. And so he absolutely had a massive part in it. And what do we have to say about humanity? If we start looking at only one person to blame, then what are we saying about ourselves?
The scapegoat again.
Exactly.
It's the scapegoat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not that we shouldn't, be responsible for our own actions, but that's exactly it. We need to be responsible for our own actions, and I think our actions...
What part of the process do you play?
Me personally?
No, just everybody.
Oh, well, exactly. That's the thing. That is the real question is, where do I fit in evil, and where do I fit in good, and what do those things mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vote for the Lucifer Party, is what I say.
I'm telling you, I think Lucifer's great. Actually, and it's funny, if you do have Netflix, the show Lucifer, kitschy as hell, cheesy, and phenomenal.
Okay, all right.
The way that they just depict him is so good because he never tells a lie, never tells anyone what they want to do.
Right.
He asks them what people want to do.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Nice.
And it's amazing. I'm just like, yes.
Very good.
Anyway,
maybe
on that.
maybe worth watching, everybody. I don't know. I don't have a TV, so, and I'm going to brag about it. So
Yeah.
that's the episode, everybody. Thank you for listening. MJ, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
I hope one of these days that you'll come back on the program if I ask you a little bit further on down the line.
Love to.
We'll talk at everybody soon, and stay luminous. Thanks.